Okay, today we will discuss the uncommon feature of Ngagyur Nyingma. His Holiness spoke about this. When His Holiness was teaching, the Jigme Rinpoche I mentioned yesterday, it seems about Jigme Rinpoche, actually I may have made a mistake yesterday. The Jigme Rinpoche from Ardilan probably wasn't. It seems he didn't go there at that time. The current Jigme Rinpoche, Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, is a different person. It's not the Jigme Rinpoche from Ardilan. At that time, at his monastery, there was a Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche who should also be one reincarnation of Khyentse Rinpoche. And what I mentioned yesterday, and also what was mentioned in the first part earlier, was about Khyentse Rinpoche. Regarding Khyentse Rinpoche, it seems later some sources mention that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche actually visited Boulder. When Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche passed away, it seems Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, that day we mentioned the 16th Karmapa, and also Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in that etc. there was Khyentse Rinpoche. But for Khyentse Rinpoche at that time I didn't see that Khyentse Rinpoche had been there. But later I found some sources saying when Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche passed away, he did visit Boulder. So it should be Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche who can be included in that etc. At that time I probably shouldn't have deleted it. Today we will talk about the monastery of Tsega Gongji Rinpoche. Tsega Gongji Rinpoche's photo should be in the back. There's someone rather tall offering a kata to His Holiness. He is a tulku with a householder status. He should be a bit further back, offering a kata to His Holiness. I remember this. The uncommon feature of Ngagyur Nyingma. Yesterday we talked about how Shakyamuni Buddha from India caused the Buddha Dharma to flourish in the Tibetan areas during this period. Today His Holiness wants to say, our Nyingma is really amazing. Let's see what the Venerable Master has to say about it. Thinking about the flourishing of all the 8 lineages of attainment in Tibet, such as Kadampa, the 8 lineages of attainment, we usually have Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, then Jonang, Gelug, and it seems Shangpa, Orgyen, and Chod, and also something else. Wherever there is this, it seems in other histories there are references, as well as the great qualities of every lineage master. It is true that all of them are the actual reincarnations of Orgyen Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. For example, in the Sakya school, in both Sakya Pandita's biography and the prophecy of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava himself, it mentions that Sakya Pandita Kunga Gyaltsen was the emanation of Padmasambhava. We have a special terma from Padmasambhava where his father, his mother, everything is explained very clearly. In the school of Kagyu, the peerless Gampopa, also known as Dawa o Shonu or Chandraprabha, also said in his biography that he was an emanation of Padmasambhava. Actually, Chandraprabha, why is he called Chandraprabha? Gampopa's past lives were all emanations of Chandraprabha. Chandraprabha was at that time the Bodhisattva who requested the Samadhiraja Sutra in front of Shakyamuni Buddha, and the Buddha prophesied, in the future you will become Gampopa. So many of Gampopa's past lives are called Chandraprabha. This is found in many biographies of the Kagyu school. In the school of Kadam, Venerable Atisha and the great Tsongkhapa were also said in biographies to be emanations of Padmasambhava. This is indeed true. These things, in what I wrote before, a brief discussion of the non-contradiction of Buddhist schools, I cited many scriptural sources. Many of them, for example in the Gelug school, Panchen Losang Choki Gyaltsen, the 4th Panchen Lama, what did he say in his writings? Padmasambhava became Venerable Atisha and finally became the great Tsongkhapa. It's not as Nyingmapa saying this, it's what the Gelugpas themselves say. So what His Holiness said is not wrong. As for the school of Jonang, some biographical writings claim that Dolpopa Sherab Gyaltsen, the author of the commentary on the Uttara Tantra Shastra, and Taranatha, the 2 well-known great lineage masters, were indeed manifestations of Padmasambhava. In the father teachings of the Kadampa school, it also says Venerable Atisha once said the following, this is indeed his exact words, all great lineage holders who spread the Buddha Dharma in the Tibetan areas, in the beginning ensured its flourishing in the middle, as well as long-term prosperity in the end, are without exception manifestations of Orgyen Rinpoche Padmasambhava. If we regularly pray to Padmasambhava, it's all very good. Guru Rinpoche himself also said, as long as you show devotion to me, the Buddha Dharma will remain in the world, especially in the Tibetan areas. If you ever start to lose faith in me and nobody remembers to supplicate me, the Dharma will quickly disappear from this world. So nowadays, many of us deeply value some of the instructions left by Padmasambhava. If more and more people in the world pray to Padmasambhava, including ourselves who often practice wrathful forms one moment, peaceful forms another, it's still very necessary. Every year we practice a little. For individuals we won't be bound by obstacles. For the whole world it brings peace. In many ways praying to Padmasambhava is truly very important. From the perspective of ultimate truth, all great lineage holders and patriarchs who were born in Tibet shared the same mind stream. From the perspective of the phenomenal level, however, no such masters as great as Ogyen Rinpoche Padmasambhava, the great Khenpo Bodhisattva, and Vimalamitra have ever been born in the Tibetan land of snows. Actually, these three were all foreigners, Indians. Padmasambhava was also Indian, Bodhisattva was too, and so was Vimalamitra. But people like this from the period of earlier propagation have been very difficult to find since then. Not only have such great Panditas never appeared again, but even the great translators of that era have not appeared since. Actually, between earlier translation and later translation, there is still a difference. This is in many histories, including when we look at the Red Annals, the famous Tibetan history of Buddhism by Bhutan, and also Sumpa's history of Buddhism. The other day I cited references from Padmasambhava's era, and also the Blue Annals. The White Annals don't really discuss this, only some cultural features of Tibet. So in these histories that are very famous and recognized in Tibet, the differences between earlier and later translations are indeed discussed. It's not just His Holiness alone saying this. Why can I make this conclusion? During the life of Lodrak Marpa Lotsawa was a great translator and also from the later propagation period. Among all the later translators, the matchless one among all translators who was responsible for later translations was Ngok Lodin Sherab. Ngok Lodin Sherab was very remarkable at that time. Some other histories also mention this. It should be in the history of esoteric Buddhism too. While attempting to translate Maitreya's ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras we translated before, from Sanskrit into Tibetan, he noticed there were many ahraka in one chapter. Translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, directly speaking, it means non-attachment. So when he was translating at that time the ahraka in that chapter, he translated them all literally as non-attachment, 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 continuously like this. Besides this, he had no way to translate it into other meanings and didn't truly understand what it meant. Finally, feeling helpless, he did some research on the Ngagyur Nyingma's translation of Buddhist texts. Amazingly, he found that in the earlier translations, this ahraka had different uses. They were used separately. For example, 6 ahraka. The first was non-attachment to generosity, non-attachment to discipline, patience, diligence, meditative concentration, and wisdom. Moreover, in terms of every paramita, for the different uses of ahraka, they distinguish between past, future, and present. Generosity of the past, generosity of the present, generosity of the future, etc. For example, generosity has past generosity, present generosity, and future generosity. At that time he saw, in our later collation, we added a verse, not going to be attached, not attached, and never having been attached. The nature of attachment is non-attachment. There was such a verse. In the second version it's included. As he noticed such beautiful paraphrases that took the factor of context into full consideration, his arrogance was completely shattered. And feeling this was extraordinary, he composed a verse of praise like this. He said, Vairotsana was like the boundless sky itself. Kawa and Chok, we don't need the Shang after that. Kawa and Chok were like the sun and moon. 2 people is fine. Change 3 people to 2 people. Rinchen Zangpo was like the great dawn star. Compared to them, we are like mere fireflies. What he meant when he composed this praise was the wisdom of Vairotsana of the earlier translation was extremely vast, like the sky. Among the later 3 of Kawa, Chok, and Shang, Kawa and Chok Kawa is Kawa Paltsek. We often see his translations, and Chok Lui Gyaltsen. These 2 people, here it's 2 people, are like the sun and moon in the sky. The great translator, Rinchen Zangpo, the precious good translator, was like the dawn star at daybreak. But we later translators of the later translation period are just like fireflies. Because they were all literal translations, he was deeply moved. Later he said this, so this is also... His Holiness at that time was speaking about history in great detail. Sometimes it's quite fascinating. Looking at all these teachings later, oh, the earlier translation school is really that amazing. Speaking of the great Panditas, just now we talked about translators. Yesterday, didn't we mention 108 translators and also 108 Panditas? The Panditas mainly came from India. Also about the Panditas in our entrance to the great vehicle, or somewhere it says the Panditas of the earlier translation were very remarkable, but the Panditas of the later translation weren't that much. Many Panditas of the later translation came to the Tibetan areas to make money. It's like nowadays many Tibetans go to the Han region just to buy a better car and a house and all sorts of things. A portion truly propagates the Dharma and benefits beings. We can't generalize about everyone, but there is also a portion like this. So the Lotsawas and Panditas of the later translation period were more complicated. There were also those like this. Again, taking the Panditas as an example, Orgyen Rinpoche Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra, from ancient times until today, their bodies have never aged. As for Padmasambhava, he now lives in Ngayab Ling, the southwest subcontinent of Jambudvipa, the Rakshasa world, and there he turns the wheel of Dharma to guide the Rakshasas. Vimalamitra has always been at Mount Wutai, turning the wheel of Dharma for the old Han Chinese monks. There are many Mongolians who have some resentment toward Padmasambhava. So now many statues of Padmasambhava are not allowed to be placed at Mount Wutai. I'm a bit unhappy about this. We should tell Vimalamitra not to do this. All Dharma practitioners who follow Padmasambhava, Vimalamitra and the great Khenpo Bodhisattva, their school is called Nyingma, which we often call the Old School. To learn and practice the complete and intact sutras and tantras, this is the uncommon feature of Nyingma. To practice the sutras and tantras completely and without deficiency, this is our distinctive feature. Some may wonder, the new schools also practice the complete sutras and tantras. Why would you say this is the uncommon and unique feature of the Nyingma school? Some people might think this way. His Holiness answers it below like this. Indeed, over 300 volumes of the Ngagyur and Tengyur existing in today's Tibet were mainly translated in the period of the earlier translation. There are also some from the new translation school, but very few, because in the over 300 volumes of the Tibetan Buddhist canon and treatises, now their publishing house has a special edition. We don't seem to have it here. The paper is in long strips. Each sutra and treatise has a colophon at the end. We all know who translated Entering the Middle Way, who translated The Way of the Bodhisattva, who translated the Middle Way treatise. At the end there are these colophons. Very few were translated after Langdama's persecution of Buddhism. There are some, as we just mentioned, there are some individual ones. Rinchen Zangpo and others have some individual ones, but not very many. The greatest quantity, the most abundant, were translated by the earlier translation school, translated by Vairotsana, translated by Shang Yeshe De, Choklui Gyaltsen, Kawa Paltsek, and so on. These translators were very remarkable, their translations, so everyone has nothing much to say about it. If you look at the Buddhist canon and treatises, most were translated by the earlier translation school. Anyone who practices sutras and tantras in general, the three inner classes of tantra, and especially the Dzogchen, this is also. So when we practice sutras and tantras, the three yogas or Dzogchen, this is called the Dharma of Nyingma. To determine whether it's truly Nyingma, we need to use this point to examine, does your center practice the Nyingma tradition? His Holiness now starts to ask. It seems at that time he asked, "You are Nyingma, right?" He asked the people nearby, and then someone nearby answered, "We are Nyingma and also Kagyu." Then His Holiness immediately below combined Nyingma and Kagyu together. He got a bit anxious. If yes, please remember this point. Keep it in your heart. I repeat again, the complete and intact teachings of Sutrayana and Tantrayana are the exclusive special Dharma of Nyingma. Besides this, other schools do not have the complete practice Dharma. Why does he say this? Other schools, such as Sakya and Kagyu, only possess Anuttara Yoga Tantra that includes the mother Tantras and father Tantras, but they fundamentally don't have Mahayoga, Anuyoga, and Ati Yoga. Why do we say it's complete and without deficiency? Because in general, other Tibetan Buddhist schools, Mahayoga and Anuyoga, these are not there. Although they have the Kala Chakra Tantra, Hevajra, Chakra Samvara, Guhya Samaja, they all have these, but the Supreme Dzogchen practice Dharma they basically don't have. So among these three practices, the Dzogchen Atiyoga teaching that enables practitioners to achieve Buddhahood in the swiftest way is only accessible in the Nyingma school. Below, His Holiness says, perhaps tonight will be a little late, but we can only do this. But just now we did the consecration. All these, His Holiness says, at the beginning, it was these two great masters who introduced and spread the Dzogchen teaching in Tibet, Guru Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra. In the middle period, it was Rongzompa Pandita and omniscient Longchenpa who carried forward the teaching and began to propagate it widely. In the later period, it was Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and Je Tsongkhapa Rinpoche who made the Nyingma teaching flourish once again in Tibet. These are the three periods of the Dzogchen teaching, namely the period of the earlier propagation, the middle propagation, and the later propagation. We probably haven't heard this before, you should think about it carefully. In the earlier period, Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra; in the middle, Rongzompa Pandita and Longchenpa; in the later period, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and Je Tsongkhapa Rinpoche. Why does he say this? Below he explains. This is still explained very well. In the period of the earlier propagation, the Dzogchen teaching taught by Guru Padmasambhava was regarded as the new Dzogchen or the Terma Dzogchen. Padmasambhava, Khandro Nyingtig, and these, the Dzogchen of Vimalamitra, is generally called the old Dzogchen or the Kama Dzogchen. Thus, there are two types of Nyingtig, the old and the new. In our Nyingtig Yabji history, it's very extensive, but here His Holiness is very condensed, a simple explanation. In the period of the middle propagation, omniscient Longchenpa determined the aspect of the mind's nature of luminosity. He mainly relied on the 17 tantras that belong to the secret category of pith instructions to explain it. Mainly the Nyingtig Yabji, the 7 treasuries and so on, mainly determining the luminosity aspect. And Rongzompa Pandita elaborated on the view of the mind's essence of emptiness. His basis was the 21 mother and child tantras that belong to the outer category of mind, as well as the tantras of the inner category of space that are classified into the 3 sections of white, black and variegated space. The space section and mind section, these tantra sections, he began to extensively explain them. Nowadays, for us, omniscient Longchenpa's teachings are propagated fairly well. Basically, everyone studies them. But Rongzompa Pandita's teachings, due to historical reasons, many have already been lost. Only the commentary on the 3 jewels and the entrance to the Great Vehicle remain. In recent years, our entrance to the Great Vehicle has been propagated fairly well, so we've also connected with the Dharma of the middle propagation period. You all are also very fortunate. Otherwise, if we mention Rongzompa Pandita and it's a shortcoming, everyone would feel rather regretful. Then below, in the period of the later propagation, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo received fortunate beings and transmitted profound instructions, mainly from the Terma aspect. In Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's biography, it also says he was extraordinarily remarkable. He was Je Tsongkhapa Rinpoche's master. The other day we connected with that commentary on the letter A. We just connected with that teaching. Originally, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's Chetsun Nyingtig and many others we haven't studied much. Actually, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, once in meditative absorption, from his meditative absorption he saw all of Padmasambhava's termas throughout the entire Tibetan areas. Their lineages, lineage holders, which Turton would reveal them, all of this manifested. So he is the king of termas among all Turtons. He was an extraordinarily great master. So his teachings, including now Kongtrul Yonten Gyatso, and the 2 of them compiled the Rinchen Terzo, he was also Je Tsongkhapa Rinpoche's Vajra master. In the later propagation period, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's profound Dharma and omniscient Je Tsongkhapa Rinpoche at that time subdued various wrong views in the Tibetan areas one by one, including various debate texts he wrote, and he expounded extensively on Dzogchen and the great net of illusion, and the doctrines of various secret tantras. If you want to study the Dzogchen teaching that is only specific to the Nyingma tradition, you must follow the teachings of these 6 great masters.
Chupun Tsulen Chua Chua Xiao
Bandar Gara Badma Sadar Da Bandar Gara Badma Sadar Bandar Gara Badma Sadar Da